Javi, I'm going to unmute you.
All right.
Okay. Good. Now, so welcome everybody. You'll have 12 seconds to introduce yourselves, just so we all kind of know who we are, because most of us don't know all of us. Some of us know a lot of us, but that's about it. So I'm Arnie Draiman. I represent foundations from overseas mostly, and work with nonprofits here in Israel, helping the foundations and philanthropists and donors to give their money away. And I do some consulting to some nonprofits if it's not a conflict of interest with the ones that my donors are interested in. Go ahead, Javi.
I'm Javi Fuchs. I do marketing consultancy for nonprofits and also small businesses. While they can be very different, they also have a lot in common, particularly small budgets. One of the things I'm very interested about is the narratives of small profits, how we translate the value of our nonprofits to talk to our donors, to influence their behavior. And I had posted in the Resource Development Facebook group specifically about this, and Arnie joined this. So I'm really arranged this. So I'm really happy to have you all here. And yeah, Gidon, let's hear from you.
Wait, okay, I'll see if I can.
I unmuted. But then you muted.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Gidon Ariel. I've been here for about 40 years in Israel. And for the past 5 years, I've been running a project called Root Source, which is a platform for pro-Israel Christians and Jews to engage with each other, mostly based on studying together the common sources of both faiths, which of course means the Jewish sources. And Baruch Hashem, I started out as a company, but finally convinced my initial funder that we should be a nonprofit. So I'm in the middle of doing that. And I also have a background in nonprofits. So that's what I like to do. Thank you very much for this, Arnie and Javi.
Pleasure. Avi, can I unmute you?
Hi, everybody. It's nice to join this call. I'm joining with one eye and keeping an eye on a baby with my other. But I guess that's common these days. So I've been in Israel about 6 years now, and I live in Jerusalem. I work at the Joint at JDC, and I work in the Resource Development Department. Prior to that, I worked in Jewish education in America for a number of years. And I know Javi from many years ago from our time at Yeshiva University. So
it's true. Nice, a memory just came up today in my Facebook memories of me and you at a Yom Ha'atzmaut thing from 2005.
But it's nice to be on this call with all of you. And this is Ziv. Ziv, say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Ziv. Okay. Can we go to Haley?
I'm sorry, what is Avi's last name? What is Avi's last name?
Talansky.
Okay. Hi.
Haley.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Haley Sussman, and I'm based in London, and I run events for My Israel, which is a sort of a UK/Israeli charity who looks after 18 small causes in Israel, doing amazing work, breaking negative cycles, and we help them, we raise money for them, and we mentor them, hold their hands, and improve their organizations. I don't just run events, I do a few other bits and pieces too. So yeah, I'm general My Israel UK team right now.
Haley, how long have you been doing that?
I've been with My Israel about 6.5 years.
Okay, I have Kate next. It's not alphabetical, so don't worry.
Okay, I hope can you hear me?
Yes, Kate, beautiful.
Weird setup. I'm Kate Holgren. I'm Director of External Relations for Palestinian Media Watch. Been there about 2.5 years now. And actually before that, I was a freelance grant writer, and one of my clients was the JDC.
Terrific. Thank you. And Chava, would you mind going next? Chava Brown. Or not. It's okay. Try again. I had unmuted you. No. All right, let's skip down to Lauren. Did we do yet? Hello. How about Liz?
Okay, hi, everybody.
Yes.
I work currently at North Shalom. I've been there for almost a year after working for 24 years at Moatzah L'Shalom Hayeled. And interested to hear what you have to say today.
Great. Great. We have a large contingent from My Israel. Donnie, do you mind going next? Let's see if I can unmute you.
There you go. I unmuted myself. Such technical.
You're the best.
So I'm Danny Frank, the founder of My Israel. We support 18 different amutot in Israel, and we raise money for them in the UK and in Israel. And the reason I have one of my team in the UK and one of my team in Israel, which is our entire team these days, is because we've had an emergency appeal, which has done really, really well. But we're fighting to get donations in the UK where people want to support UK staff at the moment, and in Israel where people want to support food vouchers, which have all been covered. So I'm interested to hear how we're going to do that, get people to support other stuff.
Excellent. Okay, who did we miss? Because as people are joining, I don't get everybody. Kalela, do you want to introduce yourself? You missed a few, but you can go ahead if you don't mind. Miss Lancaster. Oh no, she's gone. All right, Ellie, let's try you. Hold on. Go ahead, Ellie.
Hi, so I am the third contingent of My Israel. I'm the other one that's based in Israel. And you've now heard twice, sorry about the background noise, you've now heard twice about what My Israel does, and I'm the project coordinator. So I work directly with all the projects who we support, and find out what their needs are, feedback to the donors about what they've paid for. And yeah, really interested to hear what you're going to say, Arnie. Thanks for including us.
Of course, you guys are great. Lauren, you had your hand up, right? Lauren Adilev, are you there? Lauren? Okay, never mind.
I see she's unmuted. I don't know, Lauren, if you're having a tech issue with your microphone. If you're trying to talk, we can't hear you right now.
She had raised her hand in the good old Zoom raise hand fashion, but okay. Anyway, Javi, is anybody else that I missed? Just click on raise your hand because I'll see that note. I don't have everybody.
Naomi and Chava's in now, it looks like.
Chava, Chava, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Chava Brown. I'm the assistant to the director of resource development at Alin Hospital, Lynn Rehabilitation Center in Jerusalem. And I'm really interested to hear, it's always good at a time like this to kind of go back to the basics and remembering again, why are people donating? What are their motivations? And, and working on that again. So it's really wonderful to be here.
Terrific. Wendy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy, and I work for Givat Haviva International School. I originally come from the UK, and I did lots of fundraising in the UK before coming here. So I've only been at the school for a year. I'm really interested in just learning how to fundraise at this time. Ours is kind of difficult because we're a school, and we're actually just going back to work this week. But we're not Corona connected, so it's difficult. It's a hard fundraising time.
Okay, thank you. Did I miss anybody?
Noah Arad. Did Noah introduce yourself?
No.
Hold on. Go ahead, Noah.
No.
Or not. Either way. We're flexible. This is a very informal meeting. I came in my white t-shirt though. So, okay, Javi, would you mind introducing why the subject came up and why it's important to you?
Sure. Well, one of the nonprofits that I work with on strategy is called Humanity Crew. And this really got me thinking a lot about what pulls donors to donate, especially vis-a-vis Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You guys can all see my screen here, I think, right?
Yes.
I don't want to patronize you and explain Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but basically the bottom is the physiological needs, the most basic that you need for survival. And the idea is that you have to have each need met on the pyramid and able to move up, meaning you couldn't achieve self-esteem or self-actualization if you didn't have, shelter, food, the most basics. My instinctive kind of thought, which is why I brought this up, is that generally speaking, and obviously I think this changes within culture. I think, as Jewish nonprofit resource development and professionals, I think we all kind of know how much education, for example, is important in the Jewish culture, whereas outside of specifically, Jewish or very specific cultures, I get this feeling that people prefer lower of the pyramid charities, both because they feel that the need is the most urgent. It's kind of the difference between life and death. Both because I think, you can have more empirical evidence, and donors like to see that their donations are actually working. And I think as you move higher up the pyramid, that becomes more difficult to convert into language that a donor can understand. So the first thing I wanted to ask you all was, is this actually your experience yourself? Or do you find that, no, I completely disagree, that hasn't been my experience in nonprofits at all. It really just has to do more with one-on-one, the value of the donor, or the culture, like we said. So just go ahead and I guess raise your hand if you want to talk about your experience in that. Gidon.
I mute myself. I think it depends on what your organization is doing. I have a lot of educational organizations that solicit me, and my organization is an educational organization, and therefore we are, pardon the expression, squarely in the top of the triangle. And so, on the other hand, I definitely understand colleagues in my field that connect neediest, the most needy fund, so that people who come to us and, hey, you want to give some money to poor people for food or something like that? Hey, give us money and we'll help you with that too. I'm considering doing that myself as well. But to say that, gee, nobody gives to self-actualization because there's so much physical needs that are necessary in the whole world, then you've cut off a third of nonprofits in Israel, I'm guessing. And people are giving. Uvda.
So I think the reason this discussion came to be is because I had answered Javi online saying, I think donors tend to give based on what they view as a personal goal, what's near and dear to their heart, regardless of physical needs. I represent donors and foundations who are very much interested only in food, water, warmth, rest, security, and safety, no question. But I know that I think even for the majority of donors, it's only if those issues are important to them would they bother to give. So we're curious as to what other people's experiences
are. My girls, Haley and Ellie, jump in at any point, because we've got 18 different Amutot, and our donors can choose where their money goes. So sometimes we get it absolutely right, and they do only want to give. And I would say at the moment, particularly, there's been a major move towards the lowest bit of the triangle, because it's a desperate time. So it's a bit unusual. But sometimes we're completely surprised. Like, we have bar mitzvah kids, and we're pretty sure they're going to choose one of these 3 or 4 because they're more appealing to kids, and they'll choose something we didn't anticipate at all because actually they are really concerned about old people because they've got grandparents they love, or I don't know. Ellie and Haley, can you think of any other examples where we've been surprised. And I also think that there's a bit of packaging, how we promote the thing, even though it might not be something that the donor automatically would go for. So we do that quite a lot. We have to kind of to present it in a different way, so that our job is partly to help them understand that computers now, I mean, we've had a bit of a thing with this emergency appeal because we wanted to fund, we've had requests for laptops, and people weren't really going for it. Some people have had success, I heard, and we didn't. And it was really hard to convince sometimes the donors that actually right now a teenager not having a laptop is almost it's not a physiological need, but it's kind of up there with the paper and pen nowadays. You have to really educate all the time on what the issues are. And I don't think Israel's any different, by the way, to anywhere else in the world. I think we have the same range of organizations that you have anywhere, pretty much. I don't know if Haley or Ellie, you've got any, like...
Yeah, I think for a lot of our causes, mental health is a big priority, which sort of doesn't quite fit into any of these categories. It kind of does into security and safety to some extent. The esteem needs, I guess, so quite high up in the pyramid. And we do have kids that will choose mental health charities, or even our music charity. We've got a music project which provides lessons for kids from low income backgrounds. And sometimes kids just surprise us. That's what they want to pay for with their bar bat mitzvah money. So, and that comes right to the top. That's the self-actualization one.
That's great. Anyone else want to chime in?
I'd like to add a little bit that in some of the things that we've been working on, we've been able to repackage it in a way that matches the mood. And what I mean by that is, for instance, we have a programming helping the elderly to learn how to use digital tools, for instance. So during a regular day, a few months ago, we might have been talking about it in terms of helping the elderly to learn how to use their banking and avoiding loneliness and things. But today we might be saying that it's actually saving lives, because without that, people's physical situation deteriorates. So suddenly we've elevated it from being about relationships and connection and skills and stuff like that to basic needs such as safety, security, survival. And so we're able to emphasize things. I think that if you would just talk about it today in terms of, imagine that you're a senior who doesn't know how to use Facebook, and you just stop there, it would sound not as pressing and not be a high priority for people. But if you emphasize it and you say, imagine that you're all alone in your house and you can't see anybody. That's what a lot of people are facing today. And for many people, they aren't getting exercise and they're not able to move. And that actually, for a young person, doesn't impact them that much. But if you're 80 years old and you don't move at all for 2 months or 3 months, then it really causes a deterioration in your physical condition. That's why people need to know how to use computers, and we're doing this to save lives. Then suddenly people find it more pressing and it matches their mood as well. So I think that a lot of things can be repackaged in that way.
And another thing on that subject actually was quite interesting. We called one of our projects this week to let them know that we'd had quite a significant donation for food vouchers, and the director was what she said, oh my god, and that's amazing because it's just going to affect domestic violence. And her husband looked at her and goes, no, and they're funding food vouchers. And she said, yes, but the stress and the anxiety caused in the home by not having enough food comes out in so many ways, and abuse and violence is one of those ways. So actually, I hadn't thought of that. So then I started to think, well, what you're saying is true. The knock-on effect of each of the things that we support can be pretty dramatic. And actually, we need to look wider than just the most obvious thing, which is if people don't have enough food, they're hungry. And, that's obvious. But then there is actually greater benefit that we need to bring to the donor's attention.
I think that really speaks to the need to tweak your pitch in a time like this, and not just continue to repeat what you've been saying for the past few years, but you need to think, well, why is what I'm doing important today? And how is it different today? Because that's what people are waiting to hear.
Yeah. And Javi, I'm obviously asking you to just speculate here because you have no way to really know this, but do you feel that the response would have been so strong if it wasn't something that, you know, in talking about understanding the need for the elderly to have digital tools during this time? I mean, obviously, the fact that we're all experiencing this and understanding the need of digital tools, but what do you do when this need, you know, isn't something greatly experienced by the larger population? I mean, do you all think that this is more about just finding that story that sparks an emotional response in a potential donor? Or do you think it comes down more to coming down with empirical evidence, with being able to show somehow in numbers the problem and how we're addressing it? What do you all think is the more the stronger pull? Obviously it'll be different for different people, but generally speaking, what angle do you go for in terms of that pulling on the personal heartstrings, or showing the mathematics of it? Or maybe you deal with different kind of donors differently, like small one-time donors and big, you know, big one-time donors and things like that. So that's also something I'm interested in hearing from you all.
I want to leave some time for other people to talk too, but I just on that question wanted to share one example. Which first of all, I think that the overall rule is really that it depends on the donor, and you have to know your donor. Some donors will find the facts and the figures to be convincing, and other ones will find the story to be convincing. But in either case, I think that it's really important to talk about the background. When you're talking about something that people may not understand, you need to explain fully the background in whatever way will work for the donor. So, for instance, we have been distributing games to Bedouin people in the Negev, and that doesn't sound pressing because, you know, why should I pay for somebody else to play Connect 4? Or why should I be paying for somebody else to play Monopoly? Let them play their own games. I want to supply food and medical equipment. But actually, if you look at the backstory and you talk to some of the people in the field, you find out that, in fact, the army is distributing food, and the army is distributing medical supplies, and Magen David Adom is supplying those things. So they have those things, but what they don't have is anything to occupy themselves so that they practice social distancing. Because if they don't have games, then they're going to go out and play soccer with each other. And if you don't have any money so you can't buy games, and you don't have any stores so you can buy games, and you don't have any games in your neighborhood, then suddenly everybody's going out and playing with each other, and it causes an outbreak. So the best way to prevent the outbreak is by buying Connect 4 or buying Monopoly games for kids. And so when you tell people that I want to buy Monopoly or I want to buy Connect 4 for little children, you can't just say I need to buy a game, but you need to explain the story and explain why these people don't have games and explain why this is saving lives, and show them that actually what they need to give at this time more than Alcogel is a game, a board game, and that's how you're going to save people's lives. So when you want to present a need that's not obvious to your donor, you need the backstory.
What's interesting, though, is that you took a need which obviously could also be translated as higher in the pyramid, right? Because we know the importance of play for children's development. But what you're saying is that to make it speak to people, you actually brought it lower on the pyramid. You didn't focus on the self-development. You went back to they're going to die, you know, there'll be an outbreak. You went back to health.
Sure.
So that is interesting. I'm happy. I'd like to hear from other people also if they have anything to add in about that.
I have one technical thing. Wait, one moment. Sometimes on my Zoom messages, I say that it tells me that the Zoom meeting will continue for longer than the 40 minutes we're allowed for free. If we get cut off, just come back in. This is officially listed as a recurring meeting, so you can have as many as we want. So that's just in case that it happens. Secondly, in the chat, we had a question about, or mentioned, and Avi mentioned as well, about the digital tools, not just for elderly and their emotional health and safety, but for kids who are learning, distance learning, and how important it has been either for any age group in the elementary and high school areas. I have an issue now. and I want to know your opinions as well, donors who have donated laptops and tablets to kids in need who don't have them so they can do distance learning. And now that school is coming back in session, let's say in the next few days for everybody, more or less, how do you justify purchasing more laptops or tablets, or do you just chalk up that for 3 weeks they needed them and we're over? And it's kind of
Arnie, I think on that particular thing, because we have the same thing. I think that I'll give you an example. We got a huge donation recently, and it was for 12 weeks of food vouchers, assuming that this thing is going to go on for a long time. Now, we've decided we're giving them out in 3 installments because we want to review the situation as it develops. And with laptops in the set, but what the donor has kind of said is, if you don't in the end use it for food vouchers in the end because they're not needed anymore because those people are back at work or whatever, which I very much doubt, but anyway, then we know it's going to go to a really good cause and do something else that's good. So I think the two things are, either you can explain that these laptops are still unbelievably life-changing for these families and they're used by the whole family, or ask them if they can use it for something else.
And in terms of higher up on the pyramid, I think another challenge is that the donor isn't interested in giving to something that will give people something they don't have, right? So if I don't have a laptop at home, I don't think I'll be as pulled to donate a laptop to someone else. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like, well, if I can survive without it, so can they, even though our circumstances could be very different, because I also have a desktop, because I have a phone, because I have...
But Javier, I would say on that point, one of the most important jobs we have is educating and changing perceptions. And it is the hardest thing, because I've taken donors to Ethiopian homes that are very poor, and they'll go, how come they've got a flat screen TV? And you have to talk them through it, and you have to explain why they've got a flat screen TV or why they've got a phone, because the perception of a donor is that these are really, really poor people and they almost don't want them to have. So part of our job is explaining why that thing is essential. Now, I had an Ethiopian teenager, I asked her about the phone. She said, I did it on a payment plan, I pay £100 a month. If I don't have my phone, I can't do waitressing because the shifts are on the app. And if you don't get to the app quickly, you don't get your shifts. And it's suddenly like, we need to educate donors, because they still think that digital anything is a luxury, and it's for people who are in a certain financial position. And actually it's a lifeline now. And it's a really hard job, and changing perception is, I think, the hardest thing we have to do, because you don't get to see most donors one-on-one, so you don't get the opportunity to talk them through it. But I think also, Avi, I think that Avi or Ari was saying that you need to repackage things and give the backgrounds. And I think part of giving the background is explaining that these things are like pen and paper now. If you don't have them, you cannot participate in a lot of what society is doing. And yeah, anyway, that's it. That's what I think.
I just want to add to that with what Danny was saying, is that, and also what Avi was saying, is that it depends on the donor, and it depends how you package it, and it depends on what their requirements are. So something like when we get in an amount that comes in, for example, to our general fund, and it's coming through an event, like we know then that those people are not specifically interested in the numbers, but more in like the quantity, not the numbers like in how many people we were able to help, but like how many projects they were able to contribute to, or those like the different dynamics of what they were able to help with, as opposed to like the actual numbers of 417 food vouchers, you know what I mean, or something like that. The fact is, you fed people and you helped. I don't know, it depends on the dynamics, and it depends on all of that. And what Danny is saying is true. We come up across that a lot of times. What I find the problem to be sometimes is that the projects sell their projects, right, really well. So we have an amazing project, for example, that's called Kickstart. In Israel, they're called Home Base, and they deal with homeless people. And the way that they help them is they bring them in through soccer or football. I don't know how you all explain it, but they bring them in through soccer, and through the soccer, them having these weekly training sessions with them, it first of all brings them in, it gives them a sense of community and something that they belong to. And then apart from the soccer sessions, they help them with rehabilitating them. A lot of them have drug issues or alcohol or that kind of thing. Now, we know the amazing work that they do. But it's so hard for us to be able to explain to the donor the amazing work that they do. There's so many connotations and stereotypes about homeless people and how they became homeless. And what we found is that once the donor has actually spoken to the director, they're sold. It's an incredible project. And it's about how we're able to get that information across, which is the heart.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hello.
Arnie, if you want, my company pays the whole $15 a month, so I can do unlimited
Okay,
time. Unlimited.
Next time you're on, Guido.
We know.
Thank you. Thank you, people, for being patient at the informal meeting. Okay, so Ellie, did you have anything else you wanted to add to what you were saying? Because if not, I think Chava, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did.
Please do.
Okay, so basically, as I'm listening to everybody speak, I'm trying to kind of relate to what our experience has been. And one of the very first things that we did was just to reach out to our donors, just to start getting people on the phone and asking how they're doing, and showing that we care. Now, obviously, one of the biggest challenges that we had was trying to understand what was going on in the hospital, because all of the administrative staff had been sent to work from home, and all of the management of the hospital were making all the decisions. So first of all, we had to overcome that hurdle of getting the information to understand what it is, what changes are going on in the hospital, so that we can convey that to the donors. But as we're talking, it made me kind of realize that in terms of our projects, right, all of our projects and our programming, we're looking at and we're kind of thinking about where they fit on the Maslow scale. But on the other hand, the donors themselves, they're right at the top, right? The reason that they're giving is not because they need food or shelter or clothing or any of that. Their motivation for giving is right there at the top for their own self-fulfillment. So that's kind of really a whole other perspective on it. And maybe if we focus more on what are the needs of the donors, what are their reasons for being involved, their own personal reasons, which could be many different things, then it makes it a little bit easier for us to prepare our messaging for them and to prepare our communications to meet those needs that they have.
That's very good. Yes. Javi?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Great, good, thank you.
So I wanted to talk about, I kind of mentioned this before, the issue of, having empirical evidence to show, hey, this is actually a problem and not just, something that we made up, and measurement. how do you show the effect of, well, I know it's very, a lot of times you really need a long term to show, the effect of education, the effect of psychological services, things like that. How do you show progress is being made? How do you show the donors that their money is actually doing something? Is something that I guess also is something important that we need to think about. We've, talking about how their values are very important also, but I think that we really can't look over the very important aspect that especially big donors are looking for, which is that what will my money do? And how can you show me that my money actually went and did that? What are our challenges there, and what are your different approaches to that?
Oh, well, I'll answer. We give very specific feedback to each donor about whatever it is that was done. So we follow up with we support different Amutot, so we'll follow up with the Amutat to find out, like, if it was we take photographs, we send video clips from the project directors. We bring it home as much as we can to make it believable, to make sure that people understand and believe that what they did, what they wanted to do really happened.
So in a sense, you're saying instead of taking, evidence in numbers and statistics, you're bringing the empirical evidence as a documentary, so to speak, of the pictures, of the images. This is the real, okay.
It depends. It's a mixture of both. Like, for example, we've just had a huge donation effectively for food vouchers. What we've asked all of the different Amutot to do is to get one story of one recipient at each of the Amutot, and how this has actually made what this has done for them in addition to giving them food. We will confirm the exact number of food vouchers that were allocated for each one, because it might be a little bit different than what we said it would be, because needs are changing all the time. But we also, where we can and where it makes sense to do it, we have permits for kids who do fundraising projects for the horse riding for disabled people. So we'll get the director at the horse riding school to stand next to a horse and say, this is Lucky, he did this therapy, but because that's what the children love that. So it depends. So I think quite often a mixture of numbers are important, but they're also dry. So you just need, I think, to mix it up and make it a bit fresh and bring the project that your donors are supporting closer to them.
I have found in most cases that small and medium-sized nonprofits simply don't have a budget to come up with anything seriously empirical. They tend to either work on the anecdotal evidence or not even, like you said, just individual documentary evidence. There are occasional, it does happen occasionally that somebody at a university might take interest in a particular nonprofit and use that nonprofit to do some sort of master's or PhD level research, and therefore that can be used for the nonprofit as well. It would be interesting to hear from the people here. How many of you have done any kind of empirical evidence? How often do you do it for your nonprofit? How serious is it to take, and do your donors or board require it? Or I'm curious as well. Anybody? Just unmute yourself and go for it. No. Okay.
No wrong answers, people. There's no wrong answers.
No, I think that at this time, it's especially hard, when you're dealing in a crisis mode, to be able to come up with that. And that's really hard because it's what gives your donors a sense that you're trustworthy and that you're using their money in the right way. When you can come back and say, you gave us this amount of money, this is how many kids we were able to help, this is how many treatments we were able to do. And when you're working in a crisis mode, it's really hard, even just the communication, to get the information that you need from the people actually running the treatments in our case, or the program, or whatever it is, because they themselves are so focused on what they're doing that to stop, and even in normal times, right? I'm sure most of the organizations that we're working in feel overwhelmed most of the time, but especially now, to say, okay, now I'm going to stop giving a service in order to sit and collect the information to be able to tell the donor what's happening and how we're using their money, is not always a priority. It's really, really hard. And so we use whatever we can, whatever information we can give, and whatever we can retrieve, that's what we can give over. But again, it really depends on the donor. Some of them, if you have a really good relationship with the donor, so then you give them whatever it is that they need, but chances are they're not going to need those hard numbers, even if you would normally give it to them. Because they trust you. If you're talking about a big foundation that is more used to having a proper report and an evaluation, then it can become more challenging. But from what I understand, even with those big foundations, if you have a good relationship with them, a relationship that's built on trust, then you can kind of get by it for now. Eventually, you're going to have to give those numbers, but they'll be a bit more flexible right now and not having that.
I think I'd like to.
I always recommend. Go ahead, Avi.
I was just going to say that I would echo what Chava said about the fact that now it's harder to get the information because people are in the middle of an emergency situation and they're very busy with what they're doing, and you don't want to disturb them. And I think that that's an important thing to explain to a donor. I think that transparency is a big point here, and also emphasizing how good it is to get any information in this situation. If you have a picture and it's not a good quality picture, I think it's great to share with the donor, look what I got from the field. We can't send a photographer there now because everybody is in social isolation, but this is from the cell phone. This is real. This is an actual window into what's going on. And I think also priorities change during an emergency. So whereas normally we might be carefully considering what sort of efforts we're going to be taking and what the long-term plan is and how does it fit into our work plan and what stage of the development model it is. During an emergency, we might just be distributing food. And people ask, what's the long-term goal of the food? Maybe there is no long-term goal. The long-term goal is that in 2 weeks, people are still alive or people still are surviving. And therefore, in 2 weeks, we'll be able to consider how they can be educated and what sort of enrichment programs and soccer games we're going to bring them to so that they can meet other types of kids from rich neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods. But that's all in 2 or 3 weeks from now. In the meantime, the goal is a very short-term goal, and it's really just, we gave out 500 sandwiches. Do I know if kids gained weight because of that, or if kids have higher self-esteem? Did we do a survey that proves that the peanut butter was actually nutritious and extra calories went? No, but we can say that we gave out the sandwiches. And I think it's important to emphasize that this is our goal for today. We're not doing a full measurement and evaluation of this project because it's not really a project. It's a life-saving measure in an emergency. And that's okay, and that's good, and you had a part in that, and for that you should be proud. And I think that that's an important thing to say.
I think it's true what you said about, I think there's education on both sides, actually. I think we need to partly educate donors sometimes that, exactly as you said, it's not possible to produce the kind of measurement numbers or data that they're looking for. But I also think on the side of the service provider of the projects, we also have a little bit of a job to do with them because they never have time to get you that information. They never have, they never will. So you have to make it, like, we literally explain that if we don't get this information, we will not be able to get the next donation of X amount of money to enable your services to take place. There is a point at which I think we have a responsibility, because we're representing the donor and we're enabling the work to take place with the funds that we're raising for them, that they have to understand it's part of the deal. We give you this money, and part of the deal, and actually we sometimes send out, you're going to get X amount of X thousand shekel, but what we need back is, we need a photograph, we need a video clip, we need in 3 months' time, we need an update explaining whatever, and they have to agree to doing that before they send it. So they have to make time for it, because I get that it's not doing the thing, and in an emergency situation, maybe it's different, maybe that is an exception, but it's generally the case, as you said, going like generally in normal time, that is how it is, because they're all understaffed, they're all underpaid, they're all overworked. So I think sometimes we have to make it a priority. And another thing that we do with a lot of our projects, who don't have any kind of official measurement, I mean, it's what Arnie said, small organizations, they don't have empirical, but we make them kind of create it. So we'll say, for example, the homeless project that Eddie mentioned before, they're working with 56 people. Okay, give me 10 names of 10 of your people and let's follow them for the year. Let's do an update every 3 months. I want an update on these 10 people. And we ask them on the phone, because writing it gets harder for them. And it's eventually they get there, and at the end of the year, they go, oh my God, this is just brilliant, because now we can see that of the 10 people, 4 of them went back to using drugs. 3 of them are now employed. 2 of them, and they realize that actually we've created some brilliant, it may not be statistically valid, but some very good, better than anecdotal information. And we've literally forced them to do stuff they don't want to do, because we believe that it is actually the right thing for them to do. And in the end, 9 times out of 10, they are extremely grateful that they did it. So maybe we're a bit harsh, but that's the deal. It's kind of why they love and hate us at the same time.
Hi, I'd like to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I wasn't sure it's a different set of headphones. My name is Naomi. I didn't get a chance to introduce myself before. I work at an amuta called Machshava Tova. And on every day we narrow social gaps using technology, the tools. So we've been very busy during this time. I've found that it seems like a lot of what we're doing now is sort of ramping up things that we've been doing in the past. One of our major projects during the Corona time was on a regular basis, we give a lot of in-person classes from kids to up through seniors. And we had to stop that, obviously. And one of our major projects was developing a website for seniors. For seniors to do it, to use at home. And so because we're using the website and it's on, we can use, in order to do reporting for them, we've been able to use Google Analytics and analytics of the website, how many people have been on, how many people have come back, how many people we've also developed a survey, because we have already on staff someone who works with evaluation. So we developed a short survey, and so we're able to also send to our donors, as a result of our programs. We have on this website two online classes a day, and they at the end of these classes, people answer the survey. 90-something% are able to use the technical tools that we've taught them. I don't know. We give like a smattering of statistics that we're able to gather, that we don't need to necessarily bother all the everyone who's using it, but we can sort of gather on our own. That's one thing that we've been able to do, and we see that donors have reacted to that. Another thing that we've also another one of our projects that we're doing is refurbishing computers and distributing computers using refurbishing, like installing Windows 10 and Office and distributing them to families in need through the welfare departments. And so we're also able, through our own systems that we have in place, we're also able to track how many of these that we're able to use. And then the person who distributes it obviously talks to the people that he's distributing to them. And we have in our organization also a system, just basically a WhatsApp group that on a regular basis, on every day, we snap pictures. Hey, this is this is the first day of this group for kids, and they're all really cool, and we love them. So we're kind of using that WhatsApp group to glean personal stories, so we don't have to sort of bother people in the field on an extra, more than normal. So we're able to gather also necessarily call it empirical. I mean, we're not like professional evaluators, but some statistics and some personal stories, we've sent those out to donors. Some of them have also been able to as a response to the newsletters and updates that we've given, that we've sent out. We've also received donations as a result. So that's been something we're able to do.
Very good.
That's all I have to say. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing from the foundation and donor side, is that to recommend to every nonprofit, you have to get all of your staff from highest high to lowest low involved in your fundraising efforts. That just simply means that they do have to give you some kind of report. It can be verbal, it could be 30 seconds, it could be once a week, whatever, just so you know what's going on, in the field, as they say, like the Aline Hospital example, just to catch a doctor for 30 seconds in the hallway every 2 days, speak to some of the kids there that are their parents, and just get the information. It's more work for you, but the interview process, because if you wait for the official forms to come in, it's never going to happen, as Donnie was saying before. But I think all of you have to be involved everybody has to be understood that they all have to be involved somehow in the fundraising process, which is PR and marketing. Okay, Javi?
This is basically what we've been talking about the whole time.
Great.
Moving the awareness up. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add about ways that they've found to take the awareness of the donor kind of with you up the pyramid? We're working up here, and this is important. Eyes up here. We're doing important work too. Any other final thoughts, experiences?
I'm going to share my screen for a second, Javi, okay?
Go for it. I'm turning mine off.
Okay, hold on, see if I can get this. There's a quote over here. Okay, can you see this? Somebody asked, this is from 2010. Okay, it's 10 years old, but I love this quote. It says, discussions of online fundraising tend to focus on technology and the latest new bells, whistles, or widget. Raising funds online is not about technology any more than raising funds through the mail is about paper. It's about the relationship between the nonprofit and the donor who wants to support a cause. And I think the key is the word relationship there. So I think all of us know this, but it's just something that becomes crucial over time. Is that why do donors give? Because you've created a relationship with them, even if it's a one-time WhatsApp, Facebook campaign, or a long-term relationship. There's a relationship there, and that's why a donor would want to give to you.
I see, I think Lauren maybe doesn't have her microphone. She's commented a few things in the chat. I'll just read out loud. For those of you who don't have the chat open, she shares, my father's wife is Filipino. They are always asking my father and his wife for money for extraneous medical needs. They don't have hot running water, but they have cables so they can watch soccer, so they're happy. That relating back, I think, to when we were talking about, when you see a TV, a flat screen TV, kind of seems incongruous. What's it doing there? And she says, now always be aware each donor is an individual with personal preferences and opinions. And she agrees, yes, build relationships.
Okay.
Thanks, Lauren. All right, I see people are needing to sign out. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed hearing from you all. I'd love to do this, more if you have other topics that you'd like to bring up and discuss. Yeah.
There was one this morning that came up on the Facebook page there. I'll see if we can make that into another Zoom meeting and take advantage of Edon's hour-and-a-half meeting schedule.
Yeah.
Anyway, anybody have anything else they want to add?
I just want to say that, we keep talking about the relationship between the organization and the donor. And just personally, I want to say how much I get from my relationship with the nonprofit community, all you people, both in terms of learning how to better help the nonprofits I work with, and also in terms of my own personal development. So I really want to thank my higher pyramid development. So I really want to thank you all for participating and being here. I think you have a lot to share with all of us and your experiences, and I hope that if we do this again, that we'll see you.
Great. I've recorded this session, so I'm going to put it on YouTube, and whoever would want to access it can, for whatever reasons, feel free. I don't think it's going to be it won't go viral, but you know, it'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
Take care, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay healthy.
Thanks.
Bye.